Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Iowa Flood Center weekly meeting. I'm Vitor Krajewski, and I have to introduce myself because I see many faces that I don't see on a daily basis. So welcome all of you, and thank you for coming to our meeting. So typically we hold the meeting in our main office building, the hydraulics lab on the other side of the river. But we expected more people than that room can accommodate, so that's why we are here in a central location on the campus of the University of Iowa. And this is because we expected more people, and we expected more people because we have a special event today. So today we are hosting John Dorman from North Carolina. And North Carolina is, in my opinion, the most progressive state when it comes to preparations for flood risk and flood risk management. Let me quickly introduce John. I cannot list all the titles and accomplishments, but I tried my best. So he is the director of the Flood Risk Management Program in the state of North Carolina. He is also the Chief Information Officer for Emergency Management and the Director of a broader responsibility, not just related to floods, but the entire risk management in the state of North Carolina. So on the national level, he is active with FEMA. He chairs a committee, Technical Mapping Advisory Board, or TMAC. And also he is a member of the National Research Council Roundtable for Risk, Resilience, and Extreme Events. So I think I got it right. He is the brain and the hands behind many of the accomplishments and developments that the state of North Carolina accomplished over the last 15 years or so when it comes to flood resilience, it's a general term. I knew about the comprehensive statewide flood zone mapping in the state of North Carolina for quite a while, but it was only a few months ago at a meeting that Larry Weber and I that we attended in North Carolina when we were further exposed to the developments there, and John was the one who presented that, and we immediately recognized that what they have done is something special, and so we invited John to come here because we want to learn from the best. So please help me welcome John Dorman. But before I let him tell us, his story, the format for the rest of today is as follows. So we have this room, we have the presentation. Then we can stay around, here, especially those who are from out of, town. If they have extra questions, for John, so we can stay here, mingle. And then slowly we will migrate across the river to our main office building, and we will have additional meetings, there, maybe more focused and more in the spirit of exchange of information between what we have done at the Iowa Flood Center, in Iowa in general, and to further, learn from John. So take it away, John. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Hope everybody is well. Y'all are much colder than North Carolina. In fact, I got off the airplane yesterday, and VTech looked at me with these big eyes and said, "Is that all you've got to wear?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm from North Carolina." So welcome from North Carolina. Come to our beaches and spend a lot of money and give us a good tax base. And so, but I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk. We've had some discussions, VTech and I have had discussions, and there's a lot of states looking to improve flood risk management. A lot of states are doing it on their own. And I appreciate and applaud VTech for having a discussion with us, and we would like to create a relationship, not just with Iowa, but other states, to leverage all of the smart people like y'all and not recreate the wheel. And so, right off the bat, we would like to start doing that. And so I think that'll be a great partnership. I feel a little nervous about sharing about North Carolina. One, I've got a lot of slides, so this is not sunburn, this is slide burn. But the other side of it is, we're really not the best at everything. We have pilfered, we're stolen from others, and done everything we can to try to get to this level, and I think we all need to do that. So I appreciate the partnership. So let me start going through this, and if you have any questions, let me know. So just real quick, and I promise they're not all going to be white with black letters, but just a little bit about North Carolina. Got to give you a little bit sense of it. We've got a little over 10 million. We're very similar to Iowa. We've got 100 counties. I believe y'all have 99. Our size of our state's pretty similar. We're all about sweet potatoes. I think y'all are about more hogs and chickens, but we're about sweet potatoes. We're about bricks, textile, and furniture. I don't know if y'all have ever bought any furniture, but it probably came from North Carolina, if it was any good. Pepsi was invented in North Carolina, as well as Krispy Kreme donuts. How many of y'all have had Krispy Kreme donut? And how long did it take for your blood sugar to come down? Kitty Hawk, we had that on our license plates. Even though those guys were from Ohio, we still put it on our plates. The Biltmore House, but here's where it really gets to it. Our number one hazard in North Carolina is flood. Whether it's natural, intentional, or accidental, flood is our number one. And for most states, it is that, whether they are able to calculate that or not. But in North Carolina, we're able to calculate that. Unfortunately, we are behind only 3 other states with having cyclones that have hurricane force winds hitting our state. You can see since 1999, we've had 38 storms that either come in from the Gulf and come into our western mountainous areas, or we've had 14 that have actually come directly off the Atlantic coast and just put a real hurt on us. 2016, we had Hurricane Matthew, which just reminded us again how vulnerable we are. We're looking at almost $4.8 billion, and I will tell you, and I've said this with VTech, the economics that go along with flood risk management, it's not about the environment, although that's important. It's about the economy, folks. The way that we sell flood risk management in North Carolina to stakeholders and to others is that at the individual property owner, it's about the dollar. They're going to look at you and they're going to say, I'm going to take a chance of my 1-year probability. But when you start talking about the dollars in the pocket that they're going to have to pay out, that's when it becomes an issue. And I bring that up because Hurricane Matthew, even in North Carolina, we calculated about $1.5 billion of structural damage. That's to buildings and to the content in that building. There was $1.4 billion in under or uninsured coverage. Now, that's a lot of money to the economy. That's interruption to a lot of businesses. We had over $2 billion of economic loss because of interruption. So to North Carolina, to myself, flood risk management, right or wrong, is about money. And that's the way it needs to be. At least that's the way North Carolina's been presenting it. We've also been presenting it at the structural level, and I'll show you that as well. But after Hurricane Floyd, which was 1999, $6 billion event, the state of North Carolina said, okay, we're getting committed to it completely. And I hope that Iowa will do the same. North Carolina established a funding source. North Carolina established a program. And ever since 2000, we've been the ones actually maintaining and updating all models, all data, all displays and applications. It's not FEMA doing it anymore. It's North Carolina. We've seen great benefit to that as well. So as I mentioned, 2000, just want to share the progress, what we've done. And I bring this slide up because a lot of people say we've got to do this by this point in time. I just want you to know our program is a 15-year process, 16-year process. And so I would encourage this group and other stakeholders to come together and say, how do we get to the elephant at the end of the line by one bite at a time? But in 2000, we took over all the responsibilities, but between 2000 and 2008, we had our head down doing flood studies and updating the maps. We did it through our normal process, but that's what we focused on. We also collected LiDAR-derived elevation data. How many of y'all know about that technology? Okay, so let me just say, if there's any silver bullet, there's two silver bullets we have in North Carolina that I would encourage. One is the acquisition of high-resolution LiDAR, or LiDAR-derived topography. The second is going completely database-derived display. Those are the two complete silver bullets for North Carolina that has allowed us to progressively move forward. But we collected topography across the whole state. So we started moving into phase 2 in 2008, and we said, you know, we've gone across the state, now what are we going to do with ourselves? Well, then we started saying, you know, trying to figure out in or out really doesn't do it. I don't know about y'all, but there's a lot of people out there that say, hey, I'm on the other side of that line, even though that line has a 30% error to it. But I'm on the other side of that line, so it's never going to flood them. Well, guess what? Hurricane Matthew, we had almost $30 million of damage from people outside of that line. 26% of all of the claims to the NFIP are outside of the 1% annual chance line. So we said, we're going to get away from the 1% line, and we're actually going to go to the structure specific. Because if each of you are going to buy a house, you want to know what your risk is on your house, not whether that line is there, right? You want to know what your insurance rate is on that house, not based on a line. And so we started taking the approach of saying, okay, we're going to do structure specific. We also said this is the other silver bullet. We said we're going to go away from making a cartographic map to being a database-derived digital display. And I'll explain that to you. But instead of putting together an engineering model in a database, and then you come over here and make a paper copy, a book, a phys report, or you make a paper map that you have to go back to that map and change. What North Carolina's done is we say we change the database, the template automatically updates immediately. And so then we have all that data in the system, so we can do any template we want for any function we need, and that data is just being fed into it. So that was one of the big silver bullets. Two silver bullets in phase 1 and phase 2. Also real time, and I'll explain that one, but we said all of the information we're collecting for a sunny day decision needs to also be used during an unsunny day, a wet, disastrous day. And we use that significantly in Hurricane Matthew, actually to make emergency response decisions. And I'll share that with you. So phase 3, and you can see some of these are still in progress or completed. But phase 3, we said, okay, let's go completely to integrated. And that was the approach we were thinking about. I know I've got gray hair, and most of the hair is as gray as losing. Most of y'all are much younger than I am. Many of y'all are millennial. You look at your phone and you're going to ask that phone tells you something in 10 seconds or you're out of it. You want your answer and you want it immediately. So what we've created is a Millennial one-stop shop application that seamlessly carries you very quickly through what is your risk and what you can do for insurance. So we put that together. I'll show that to you real quick. We actually now are taking our data and calculating what FEMA's rate would be for insurance. That's been very eye-opening for us. We are on our second wave of LiDAR. I'll show you that. We're also using that same set of LiDAR to know roads because I can tell you, as y'all probably know, a lot of times when the water gets outside of a bank, it either crosses and approaches to a bridge or it floods over a road. And in North Carolina, most of the people that died during Hurricane Floyd and Matthew were driving across the roads. So it's very important for us to know those. We're updating our NFIP tracking. We want communities to be updating their floodplain management. But the issue is they really don't have good tools to do that. So we've been working on that. mitigation life cycle, that's carrying them through that full cycle. And then one of the other things we had during Hurricane Matthew was, and y'all probably had it with either levees or dams, is a lot of our dams breached. And I can tell you, most people don't know what their risk is behind a levee or a flood. The Corps started looking at those things, but that's not even displayed on a map as a true risk. It's an A99 or an AO. And so we're actually doing inundation map libraries that will do real-time assessments for us. And then finally, and this is not a final given, but we in North Carolina are seeing that we're paying more flood insurance than we should. Based on our risk that we're running right now, we're paying more to the NFIP than we should. So a lot of stakeholders in North Carolina are discussing right now, North Carolina actually may become a flood insurance provider. Just like the NFIP, we may be an alternative for it. So that will be interesting. We'll see how that goes. And then the other is that VTech and I were talking about is, artificial intelligence is the next wave. And is there a way that we can use the data and use the processing of the systems and train them so that they can start doing much quicker and learn from what they're learning and start calculating out for us answers quicker. So we're looking to get into AI at some point in time. So just to explain very quickly, this is the way we did it. Of course, we had to do it from ground up. Excuse me. We have an IT system in place, a very large set of data. We're at about a half a petabyte. We've collected a lot of framework data, including the LiDAR, and that's really the largest portion of that. What we do is then we calculate hazards, and it's not just flood. We actually do all hazards because we're in emergency management. But we also then collect the information about the living and built environment. And we actually then, as you can imagine, we intersect those two and we calculate what the damage is to the individual or to the property. We get the probability, we get the severity, and then we get the consequences associated with that. Then what we do is we go out, as most would, and do outreach, and then we come up with a mitigating strategy, and we actually have tools that carry them through that process. As I mentioned, that's on the planning happy sunny day that everybody can sit down and talk. But all of that information is now being used in North Carolina for real time. And so we have created a real-time operating system that takes sensors that are out there, either stream gauges, rain gauges, environmental gauges, all being brought into it. And the intent is for my boss, the Director of Emergency Management, to be able to make real-time decisions based on risk management information. And I will tell you, the reason why I bring this up is the flood program is the full foundation of all of this. I can tell you, if you create a flood program, full flood program in Iowa, it will have dramatic added benefits. I can tell you, after 2008, we looked back and we said, okay, for everything we bought, our operations, all of those costs against what the cost avoidance would be for people with these new maps, it was $2.50 for every dollar we spent. And that's even before we started calculating risk. So we know there's great value to that. So here's what we've done. We've collected these and other sets of data, topography. We've calculated and put together buildings. We've collected first floor elevations using the LiDAR. We have a mobile LiDAR truck that collects that. Then we take the flood theme. We've calculated what the 10, 25, 50, 100, and 500 year water surface elevation is. And we take that raster and we subtract it from the first floor elevation. That gives us a depth of flooding in the building. We know, because we have parcel data, we know what the occupancy type is, and then we use HAZs, the depth damage curves that are in HAZs, to calculate what the damage is. We can calculate for every building what the financial cost is to rebuild that property. Okay? And so by doing that, we do a structure-specific risk assessment. We then can take all of the mitigating strategies that FEMA has provided, like wet proofing, dry proofing, levees, those different items, and we subtract that from the loss avoidance, and we start calculating what is the best mitigating strategy. And then we can also calculate the insurance rate. All of that's in the database that we have that is relational and also allows us to do point-and-click queries. So all of that feeds into, and each one of these are different views in our application. So right now you can do a point-and-click anywhere on the face of the earth in North Carolina, and we'll tell you what the base flood elevation is if it's in a stream or river, okay? You also then can click on any building in North Carolina, and it will tell you for those 5 different frequencies what the depth of flooding will be in your property and what the financial cost will be for that. It'll actually also tell you what the interval of event will be. So it interpolates between them, and it may be a 33-year event, but it tells you exactly when the water approaches. Then what we allow you to do is to say, okay, what's the best mitigating strategy, cost-benefit wise, to what I need to do? So it's carrying you through that identification, assessment, mitigation. Then we also offer you what is the financial cost to do insurance with FEMA right now. So it lets you look at those numbers, what it might be. We have our floodplain management site. Then we have the Millennial site. I'll show you that in just a minute. And then here's the cool thing. We also have an IRIS site. Forgive me, started copying iPhone and all that stuff. We probably should have done that. But we have an IRIS site that allows you to click on a property, and we're running all of the other hazards on that same set of buildings. So we actually know with a hurricane force winds, we know for earthquake, we know for all of the other natural hazards, what the financial cost will be and how you mitigate that. The person can see what their worst event is. All of that's on the planning side, but then as y'all have, we have stream gauges that are out there. We have probably 500 or 600 stream gauges that are out. And that stream gauge information comes into our database as well on a real-time basis. And as it goes up and down every half foot, we've already calculated all of the buildings that are flooded, how deep they're flooded, and it actually shows that in our flood warning system, what's called Flood Inundation Mapping and Alert Network. We also, though, are working right now on an application where for all of the emergency response people, the ability to see if a dam breaks, who's going to actually be impacted, what are the phone numbers to call, and what are the roads that are going to be crossed in the approach time. I'll show you that as well. We also, during Matthew, we can already ahead of time pre-calculate what the financial issues are going to be if we know what the water surface is. So with Hurricane Matthew, we were able to actually, before the Hurricane Matthew even left the state, we were calculating by county residential cost, commercial cost, and public cost. And that expedited our presidential declaration. And then this is just those numbers. So, show you very quickly, hopefully I'm not losing y'all yet, or y'all are getting burned in the face. So this is our website. You can click on any county. So here's all of our buildings actually in the web, and this is a public viewer, so y'all can all go to it at any point in time. You can click on any building, but you can see the blue is the 100-year or the 1% annual chance. The hashed is the floodway, and the yellow is the 500-year. You can do different, because it's a database derived, you can display different things. So this is a depth of flooding, so depth of raster. You can also do probabilities. I mean, once you have the data in the database, you can start doing all kinds of statistics. But then you can actually click on the property, and this is, how many of y'all know GIS? Okay. Y'all know what a raster is, right? It's not a polygon, it's a smart grid, basically, right? And so what we've got is we have a grid that's a 10-foot by 10-foot grid. And it shows the inundation. So every time someone clicks on the map, he clicks one of those 10 by 10-foot grids. And what it does is it immediately goes out to every table and every database we have, and what is associated with that 10-foot grid, and it can pull back any set of information. So what we're showing up here is the flood hazard information. So When they click on that building, it's actually telling them what the stream is, the AE. It's in a 1% annual chance. It gives the community that 10-foot grid is associated with, and a lot of other information associated with that. But if you click on the risk up there and click the building, now it's going to tell you everything about the building. So what you have now, is you have what the value of the property is. We get that from the parcel information. We have, I can't read what that is, story, the number of stories, whether it's a crawl space, what the foundation is, what the occupancy type is. And then down here it says for a 10-year, what the financial cost is, all the way down to the 500-year, what the financial cost is. You click that on any building, and once again, the database is pulling from any database, any table that's out there. So then you say, oh my gosh, I'm in a hurt locker. What do I do about that? Well, the same system has the mitigating strategies. And so what we do is here are the different strategies: elevation, wet-proof, dry-proof, levee, flood wall, a bunch of different options. Well, the system has already calculated the cost avoidance for what it would be to do this, and then what the financial cost is to actually implement. And what it gives you is a return on investment, so you can pick whichever of those options you want to go down that track and do. So once again, we're trying to identify the hazard, the impact on the individual, and we're now looking at the mitigating approach. And it allows you to calculate a flood risk management report. We do that for FEMA's purposes. But then, when you click on flood insurance, now it allows you on that same property, it's going to tell you based on FEMA's tables for rates, based on the data we've collected, what the insurance rate will be on a range will be on a monthly basis and on a yearly basis. And you know, if you said, you know, John, data is completely wrong. Actually, I'm a 2-story. I'm a crawl space. You can make any of these changes in the system, and it will rerun what your insurance rate will be. So once again, we're trying to get someone to the water and get them to drink, and the water is really buying flood insurance, making some mitigating strategy on what they should do with this risk. So, do I still have all y'all, or have I lost you? Sorry, I'm talking. So we actually, I can say, when we started the program back in 2000, our website was terrible. And you know what? We didn't do anything with our main site for years. And it was god-awful. So what we decided to do was update this site. The most important thing I want to show you is what the Millennial component would be. You'll be able to pull this up on your phone. And so you identify your location, and what it very quickly tells you is your rate, your risk of flooding, what the financial damage would be for your property, whether you're residential, and what your estimated cost would be for insurance. And then if you click down here, if you wanted to go further, then what it shows you down at the bottom is a dashboard, in essence. And that dashboard, once again, tells you your hazard, your impact, your insurance, your mitigating strategies, and your flood gauges around where you live. So you're saying, you know, John, you just wasted money on another website. Well, we believe someone will use this before they go to more of the technical version. And so what you have here is, if you click on your hazard, this button right here, then what you get is some of that same information, and it tells you what your actual hazard information, your rate is, medium. Then you can actually bring up what is the SQL template of what is the firms that we've constructed from the database, so they can actually see the firm. Then if you click on the impact, we have the ability here to move that up and down, change your crawl space or the type of foundation, and it can move up and down, and as you move that up and down, it'll tell you what the cost would be, give you some ideas. On insurance, same set of information, but just displayed a little different way. Then on mitigation, this is what I was just talking about. There are 2 mitigating options that have a greater than 1 value. So you can do a wet proofing or a utility elevation. You can see a 1.04 and a 4 point, so you can make a decision on that mitigation. And then the final is, you can click down there in the right-hand corner. It says that near you are 16 different gauges. And this kicks you off over to the flood warning system. But the green on there tells you that your gauges around where you live are green. Water's in the bank. Okay? So that's a very quick approach for how we do that. And you can actually drag up here out to 500 miles if you want. But I'm not sure you'll get, I don't know what you get. Maybe somebody needs to try that. So very quickly on the flood warning system. So we have a lot of data that we're collecting from the repeaters. We go through a software tool called Contrail, and it goes into as some data. We also collect and share with USGS on their gauges. That's all coming into the system. Feynman is utilizing Esri software. We're doing an ArcGIS, ARC server. Then we also have our databases, and so what that allows us to do is it allows us to calculate based on those gauges that same set of information. So this is our flood warning site, and so you can see all of the different gauges. There are several different things to it, if I can share with you. One is the current condition, that's the inside. The dashes tell you whether it's holding steady. If it was going up, it would be an arrow up or an arrow down. It also tells you what is a forecasted elevation. So it would be one of these numbers over here, these colors. That's based on what sites we have forecast for. And then there's a third ring on the outside that basically says, is it actually raining at that location? Now, you know, when y'all go to this site, we love any kind of comments you got on this. I can tell you, we typically have about 25,000 hits on this a day. When Hurricane Matthew came, it was 3.8 million a day. And so we truly believe people are using it. This is what during Hurricane Matthew it looked like. Purple, unfortunately, is bad. And so you can see a lot of them were being forecasted. Though what that did for us is for all of the emergency managers going out to do swift water rescue or helo aquatic rescue or, you know, during and after an event, the real question is, where do I go? How do I know where to go? And to do efficient response, you basically can start looking at the gauges and where they're forecast and say, all right, do I head that direction? And for us, that was very beneficial. This is just another view of it where Matthew was tailing off after it already done its stupid stuff. And you can see the purples are going even greater. This is what it was 2 days later, and unfortunately, most all of those gauges were going purple. So what you can do is if you see a purple, whatever color, you can actually click on that gauge. One other thing just to share with you, if you're somewhere here with your location on your phone, or you can click a point, you can find out all of the gauges and what those gauges are currently doing. You also have the ability to click on the little arrow over here, and that arrow says, I need a text from someone if I'm going to be flooded. So it'll send out an alert either through text or through email. So when you zoom in, you've seen this dashboard before, right? Somewhat the same. But what it provides for us is what's the stage at that actual gauge, what's the cubic feet per second there. It provides what is the current flow and what's the anticipated. We've got 3 different approaches here. We've got a current, what's currently going on, a scenario, and a forecast. And so you can click on any one of those. This one is, I believe this is scenario. You can see it's already calculated $13 billion in damage. Excuse me, $1 billion in damage. And then what it does for us is residential, commercial, public. We know exactly how deep the water is going to be, and the colors also tell you which of the buildings to use. Once again, our county managers were using this on a moment-by-moment basis to make decisions. Then you also have the ability, remember we were talking about a SQL report template. You can have that template, pull the data out of the database, and it throws it up there every moment, every second that you need it. The other cool thing is you can actually click on the building and it'll tell you the attributes about the property as well. So it'll tell you how deep the flooding is it non-residential, residential, and financial costs. This is just an example of what was going on during Hurricane Matthew in a place called Kinston. Unfortunately, Kinston, when it floods, it splits the city in two. So knowing the forecast and knowing the buildings it was going to do, they moved them out a day and a half before the water ever came down. We didn't lose any lives. Everybody just, unfortunately, sat back and watched the flooding occur. This is the forecast. So we draw the forecast from the Weather Service at those gauges, and as they report a forecast, we track along here. Now, it's all purple. It would be different colors based on the flooding that would be occurring at those hours from this present moment out. But it would show you here that the peak flood will be 26.3 on this gauge, and it actually tells you the time when it's going to flood. That was very helpful for us. I'll just share this with you. So I've never had this before in my life, and I think I probably sweated out 2 or 3 shirts from it. We started dealing with the finding system. Everybody started saying, we've got to use this operation. That's great. Started getting phone calls from county people. Start saying, hey, do I need to move these people out of their buildings? And folks, it's people's lives. It's also money. This one, the real one that came up was there were 2 correctional facilities right down in a place called Goldsboro. And they were asking, do we need to move 200 inmates out of 2 facilities, move them out of the way? Well, you know, that's a lot of money, but that's people possibly die. So what we did was we ran our analysis. Because of the LiDAR that we have, because of the modeling, we told them it was going to be about 2 feet in their properties. So they left the facility before the flooding ever occurred. And guess what? They had 2 feet of water in both those properties. And so, good or bad, having that kind of information, it becomes an operational tool that people make decisions. And so, no matter what's happened over the last 15 years, that decision right there, it's already solved the program because it saved lives. And you can do it here as well. This is some other information that just came out of the system. So on a moment-by-moment basis, we can tell you which ones are flooding. We can tell you the actual depth of flooding and how many buildings. This is the forecast, so we can do it for current and forecasted. This is going downstream to folks. The other thing we were doing is also, based on the forecast, we could say, hey, actually, the water is going to start receding on this time. And that told them when they could go out. And then the final thing on this is our ability to actually start calculating what the financial cost is for the damage. So, I'm sorry if I lost y'all. Okay. So another cool thing that I'm excited about is we have this application called State Emergency Response Application. And this was really constructed, and love to talk to anybody in y'all state about this, but the State Emergency Response Application was set up for schools. So actually what we have is we have all of the building floor plans for every school in North Carolina. And we've geocoded them actually on top of imagery. And we actually know the floor plan. And they're putting attributes on that so that, as we just saw with Kentucky, if there's an incident that occurs, people know exactly where to go without having to stop and ask. So we're doing K through 12, our community colleges, our universities, but the one I want to point up here is dams with regards to floods. So this is one of the looks of the application that we're doing with that. Here's the county, here's the dam. Basically over here it defines, you don't see the other information, but it's the inundation of the map library using those same buildings, running the same depth damage curves. But what we're doing is we're providing an understanding of when the water will arrive and which buildings will be flooded by X amount of feet. We then also, based on the parcel information and the information of other individuals, we actually have everybody in there that needs to be contacted. We know by parcel, you can click on those parcels and see who they are, and then we also have it by road. So I guess the whole point of this is it's all one system with a lot of different tables, all being geocoded and supported together. And the digital takes us that route. So that's very important for us. And then, of course, you have what your response will be, what they're supposed to be following. So one of the other sets of information that we do collect is policy data. Does anybody in here have access to NFIP policy data? No, you do, okay. So what we've done is, hopefully y'all will be able to as well, is we've geocoded every one of the policies back to an address, to a property. What that starts allowing us to do is to make insurance discussions on when we change them out, what does it do to the insurance policies? And so you can see for all of these properties up here, we know which ones are in the VE, AE, the X zone. You can see what the annual premium is. We've got a lot of information on the NFIP policy. You can see where most of our claims have been. A whole lot of data that you can pull out of it. This is the information that we're going to actually be able to use to actuarially set rates for doing insurance in North Carolina. But it's all about tying it back to those buildings. I just went through this. I think, Tech, we were talking about this yesterday. We actually even know who are the actual write-your-own policy providers. So good bit of information. This is what we actually provide to many of the counties when we go to them. We say we've made a change on your flood theme. We basically can show them now that this is the number that was actually in the VE zone, and this is what the change is. And let me tell you, we just updated coastal studies, and you can see that 14,000 properties, almost 15,000 properties, are coming out of the VE zone. Man, you're talking about a big question about the data. But we've run the data again, and it looks good. You've got 17,000 coming out of the A zone. So, you know, I'm talking out of the other side of my mouth when I'm taking people out, right? But the question is it an accurate set of information? And we believe it is. I won't go through this too much. This is during an event. You can show different sets of information in each of these boxes. Find how many buildings are being flooded. Kind of gives them a sense of where they would want to or need to go down here. And then you can start running things by residential, non-residential, public, by county. This is insurance. And you can see all of these that don't have insurance coverage. Another way of looking at it is you've got these counties over here that there's a real deficit going on that the state or the federal government's going to have to pick it up and started helping us get an understanding of how to work that. So the final thing before I get to other data is this the direction we're heading. And I kind of mentioned that. We're right now being able to compute and do analysis, but what we really like to do is to move it the AI learned prediction side of things. And I think a lot of what DTEC's doing with water and a relationship there may be able to help us out with that. Let me stop right there. I know it's a lot, and I've got all the data behind it, so y'all probably said I didn't come through all this. But any questions about what we're doing at this point in time, or is it time to stop?
No, so if you would like to stop, so let's start by thanking you. It's a lot of information that Tom provided. My very quick conclusion is we have some catching up to do. All right, so.
Yes, sir.
I agree, this is awesome. So in some of the stories we hear, it would seem valuable to have information on, I guess what we're calling an indirect financial or displacement burden related to floods. I mean, you didn't flood yourself, but there was some burden on you. Your workplace flooded, or you had to drive an extra 100 miles to get to work. And one of the reasons why that's of interest to folks is the city of Cedar Rapids needs to build a wall for themselves, but they want to assess the entire county.
Yeah.
And so how do you start to have that conversation, or how can this information enable that conversation so everyone pitches in to fix the problem?
So we did not put up here our infrastructure data. That's another huge component of that. I think, actually, an example of what you're talking about is City of Lumberton had a significant flooding because they had a levee that actually they had an opening where a CSX railroad was. They didn't have a floodgate there. So river came up, flooded everything. So they're trying to determine where to move things, where to put additional berms up. And so what we do is we do the engineering, and then we use implant, some of the economic models, and we run that through the model to calculate, all right, what are the disruptions that would occur? You know, I'm not an economist, that's why I've got an economist on board. The economist would run those, and a lot of those rates are inside of that. So, but you first have got to calculate what structural change mitigating you would do and what the impact would be.
Hi. Here in Iowa, we have state regulations about floodplain development and floodplain. Do you guys have any of that in North Carolina? And then what's your coverage like for NFIP communities? Is it really the entire state, or do you have some communities that haven't got on board yet?
So every state that sells or is allowed to buy NFIP flood insurance has to abide by the flood prevention ordinance. So in North Carolina, all 100 counties all have adopted the flood prevention ordinance that they track. Of the 500 and some municipalities, we've got about 20 municipalities that have not done it. About half of those is because they don't have any flooding in their municipality. The others, though, we keep saying they're in sanction, or they just don't want to do it. And, you know, to me, shame on the elected officials if they don't do that. Some of them, though, don't have the staff to be able to do it. So there's a relationship between the municipality and the county that we allow, so that they contract with the county, and the county actually does the work for them. One of the things on floodplain management that I didn't describe up here is a self-reporting tool that communities that have the ability, they can go in and actually do a CAF for themselves. We'll back check it. Because, you know, typically, it's kind of like an auditor. Hey, I'm doing a CAF. They don't really care for the people. But we're trying to make it a good relationship. So if they can get into the tool, we can do their own tracking, or where they see they've got some issues and they want to have a relationship with us on that. That usually works. Yes, sir.
Have you had municipalities use these tools to get community grants?
As who?
Have you had municipalities use this tool to get community grants credit?
Yeah, so you know there are state level credits that who's it, the IOG or IOC? There's a group that calculates those rates, and one of the things that we've tried to do is to use state level credits to help each of those CRS communities. The problem is every time they make a change on the CRS credits or the approach for getting those credits, it changes their CRS numbers. But many of the communities are able to use this to say we're going out doing our own flood mitigation projects, and so yes, they are using it. I'm not sure how many points are gained. I think what you have to get 500 points to go to each of the levels. Charlotte-Mecklenburg in North Carolina is probably the most robust in CRS. I don't know about y'all, but CRS is a very difficult thing to do administratively, because you got to keep up with a lot of paperwork. So that's one of the other things that we're looking to try to do is, can we create a CRS application that tells them what the cost is going to be? Maybe online they can track some of those things efficiently. Yes, sir.
Gray system allows you to manage risk at any time, at several moments, before or after. Some question about cost, and first of all, is this platform transferable, scalable? And if we are to go about the same route, which is good, what does it mean? How many years, how much money? And the last question, but it's related, how is the update being done on the system? This is a living database, so do you have coupled to the database input mechanism, or you have to do it periodically?
So VTech said he had all the money to do this.
I know. He said it, he not said it.
So one of the reasons why we talk about collaboration, in our system we have Florida, Alabama, North Dakota is looking to come into our system. The system is a scalable system. You know, you saw flood hazard, flood risk, flood mitigation. You can stop at flood hazard. In fact, what we did with Alabama is we took the effective FEMA database, just back populated it into our overall database. And what we do is we give a copy of that database as a local version for the state. As they update their information, they put it in there, they send it to us, and our application has a display view for them.
But they have to have LiDAR.
They have to have what?
LiDAR.
No, you can take the effective database that you've already got, and put the hazard information in there right now. And as you build, like I said, it's taken us 16, 17 years. As you go in and you do some buildings for a couple counties, and you run risk on that, and you plug those sets of information in the system, you just take that localized copy, send us the updated copy. Now, to build this system in-house, probably about $1.5 million. But I would just say, and y'all can do whatever you want, but we're certainly willing to give you all of the programming and the database structure and dictionary and all of the issue papers that we've written on this, because it was paid for by state and federal dollars. So it's, you know, we're not cornering the market. Y'all can have everything you want.
So contact your legislators and tell them to double the budget for the IRA project. That will be a good starting point.
Let me just say, and I'm not here to sell, but what we told Florida, and what we told Alabama, what we told Virginia is come into the system. To bring Florida into the system was $90,000. That was to get the hazards up to speed. Now they had to provide some other GIS. It was $90,000. And we said, stay in the system as long as you want. I charge $1,000 a year to maintain. Everything else is on the state to do. And then at some point in time when you're ready and you've got the ability to do it, you take any of this back to your own state, put it in your own infrastructure. So,
And updates? What about updates? How do you update that, the infrastructure and other things?
so we are emergency management. So I've got probably about 130 servers that,
Getting from
you know, this application benefits from all the other things we're doing in emergency management. That's why I charge Florida $1,000 a year. I'm not even sure I've collected $1,000 from them over the last 2 years because we're built low enough that it doesn't make a difference.
So, but what is the size of your operation? You know, how many people and annual budget, if you can share that?
Sure. So the mapping program for flood is about 25 people. My overall organization is about 80 folks. 25 deals with people that deal with IT, dealing with GIS. GIS is a significant component. I've got 5 or 6 engineers who, and I use contractors significantly. So I've got qualification-based contracts that I say, all right, you guys go out and study the streams, bring me your engineering work, and we qualify it, we review it and approve it, and they seal it. And so we use a lot of private sector on that. We do all the review and approval. We have about 5 or 6 folks that are outreach folks that go out and do the scoping, the initial scoping up front to ask the community what they need to study. And then we go through the process, and they're the ones talking with them along the line. And then when they get to the letter of map, the letter of final determination and the approval process.
And do you engage the universities? You have some great universities in the state.
Universities don't do anything. No, I'm joking. That didn't go over well. Actually, sorry. No, actually, in North Carolina, there's a Center of Excellence. Actually, I think that's for possibility for y'all, but Center of Excellence that actually works on flood analytics. It's called Renaissance Computing Institute. And we use them several times for our coastal work. And then we also use private sector. But universities have a lot of research capability, either grad students or others that we utilize for some things. Yes, sir.
So you said your sales pitch essentially is economics, and that makes perfect sense in urban areas, buildings in their context, the numbers go up pretty rapidly. What about rural landscapes, ag lands? Does that economic sales pitch work in that environment?
Not for agriculture.
Yeah.
At least they have at this point in time. And you know, they can go through other insurance with the ag department. I mean, I can tell you there's a lot of, I'm not saying this is about y'all, but I can tell you in North Carolina there's a lot of fraud that many of the bureaus that work with ag look at. And so they're very interested in being able to track heading to the market and what happens in that period of time. But no, right now on the ag side, we really haven't had much involvement.
So I want to kind of ask the question again of, because when I see this, I see a lot of the ideas that we have be materialized there, right? There is a lot of information. I see more of an agency infrastructure doing this work, and I think that having that drive, having a state-based insurance program, that justifies the entire operation, right? So then, but at the end of the day, it's all on a cost-benefit basis, right? So, but I do want to hear that number of what is the operational cost of running this agency, and I see a 20-year timeline, and if you can just give us that sense.
Sure. So we received two sets of funding. One set is the North Carolina General Assembly, when it established the program, said that deed of trust and mortgages, the recording of those with the county, was a point in time when someone needed to see if they were in the floodplain. You've got flood determination companies doing that, following up on your mortgage. You need to make sure you've got good information. So they said there's a fee that happens when you record your deed or your mortgage. That program needs to receive a small portion of that. And so that's the way it started back in 2006. Now, a couple years later, and I was telling detective, they actually changed it so it's ever recorded. It's deaths, births, divorces, marriages, deed of trust, all of those. We get a smaller percent. We went revenue neutral. To answer your question, though, what it generates for us is about $5.3 million on an annual basis. And I use that for my operations. I do not use any federal dollars for my operations because I never know when we'll shut down, right? But that money also is used to match FEMA federal dollars. And from the federal government, in the heyday years, we would receive $8, $9, $10 million. Right now, we're receiving about $2.5 million. And so it defines how much work we can do, but I would say on an annual basis to cover my operations is at it's probably $3.5, $4 million, and now leverage that other $1.5 million for collecting other data and/or flood study.
And then on the side of the benefit, just give us a sense of, if your current thinking, if you were running that regional insurance program, so for North Carolina, as opposed to sending the money to the federal government, what is the valuation that you have?
Well, I'm not sure the full number at this point in time, but I can tell you that we've studied full risk and run that through the process, and we've seen that of the 3 or 4 counties we applied that to, that 90% of all of the flood insurance that's there right now is definitely below what the cost is that NFIP is charging. Anywhere between 7 to 15%. So right off the bat, they're paying more money, and that's at full risk.
And that in absolute numbers, how much is that?
I don't know.
Yes, okay, so.
That's what we'll collaborate with you on.
No. We need to collaborate.
How are you determining these costs that you're listing for potential losses? And have they shown to be accurate?
Yeah, so some of the other slides that I've got, actually, when Matthew happened, we had a great opportunity to go out and say, all right, what we modeled and used with gauges, how close was it with the substantial damage estimates that are done accurate, and we're pretty spot on. I will say some of the folks doing substantial damage don't quite know exactly how to do things sometimes, but for most of the properties we've got, they're pretty spot on.
So Jones, I have related question. So, okay, so you have this publicly open website. People can go there, click on any building. So you have inventory for all the buildings in the state. And then you calculate a bunch of things. So are there any privacy issues? Do people object to having like their house exposed that way?
Well, and the answer is in North Carolina, no. I would say about 10 years ago when we started thinking about doing the IRIS site, we actually called in the home builders and the real estate agents. And the first thing they said was, you cannot put this information out. It's going to kill us. I said, okay. We said, now what are you going to do when you're taking somebody to buy a house? Well, we need that information. So you're talking about both sides of the map. I will tell you this, what the real estate and home builders and any individual wants is they're okay with it being out there as long as it's accurate. I've had discussions with the National Association of Realtors, a fellow named Austin Perez, and Austin is at Congress right now telling them that we need LiDAR across the whole nation, that they like what North Carolina is doing at the structural level, because you're going to be the ones doing the transactions. If y'all want to buy a house, don't y'all want to know what's accurate? Instead of, here's a line, take a guess. So, real estate folks, when they're selling something, they don't want to have an issue with them selling a house that someone says, hey, you didn't let me know that. They also, it goes both ways. So we really now have not had any issue with it.
All right, well, help me thank John again. Thank you. And as a reminder, we'll stay in this room, whoever would like to talk to John some more. So stay, mingle, and then slowly we'll migrate to other buildings. Thank you very much.